You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Golnoush Goharzad, founder of Goharzad Law APC, focusing on personal injury law in Southern California. How are you?
I'm good, Benny. Thanks. How are you?
Good. So glad we could finally connect and record an episode.
Absolutely. Can I add that it's also personal injury and employment law?
Personal injury and employment law. Very good. Okay, so before we go on further, we do want to say a note from our friends at Lex Reception. Great business partner of ours here at Lawyer Stories. Less admin, more time for you. Switch off on the weekends, the evenings, knowing that your calls are going to be covered by Lex Reception. From answering calls and messages in real time to appointment scheduling, your clients are going to receive the care and support that they need with Lex. Their legal answering specialists are going to be on hand 24/7, and you'll never miss a call or a future case. With custom scripting and software that can seamlessly integrate with your current workflow, Lex will make sure every potential client gets fantastic service, and from the very first call, you're not going to miss any calls. And Lawyer Stories listeners, $250 off your first month for service. All right. Back to you, Golnoush. So we're doing personal injury and employment law in Southern California. How are things out there these days?
Great. Perfect as usual.
Good. Perfect. All right. Did you see the eclipse or anything like that?
So I was in the middle of a meeting, so I couldn't. But I lived vicariously through all the, the social media
posts and social media.
Yeah.
Understood. I get it. 100%. So give us a little background about yourself. I know you submitted your story. We haven't featured you yet. Looking forward to doing that. But I do want to know, born and raised, tell us, are you a California person? Tell us all about it.
Sure. I was actually born in Iran. I immigrated here with my family when I was 3 years old. I've lived in California my entire life since, Orange County and LA. I'm definitely a California girl through and through.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've been out there a couple of times, but we do actually want to do an event out there at some point.
You should. Yeah. I know you've had some of my colleagues on from the Inspiring Women in Law League. So yeah, come out here.
Shout out to I Will and Milan.
Shout out to I Will.
Doing a great job over there. So tell us, when did you know that you wanted to be a lawyer? Did you have a moment, or tell us about the big revelation that you had, I'm going to be an employment and personal injury lawyer. Although we will talk about where you started and how you got to PI, but I guess just the basic question, when did you know and how, what was the moment?
I always say that lawyers are born and not made. Okay. And, you can train someone from being a good lawyer into a great lawyer, but a good lawyer is kind of born. So I think it was always the path for me. I grew up with everyone being like, oh, you should be a lawyer when you grow up. And but I was a kid and I wanted to be Madonna. So that, was my number one career choice. But at some point it just became, something I was super interested in. I was in court in high school, even. Mock trial, debate team, all of those things since I was a teenager. I went to UCI and I knew I wanted to go to law school, but just in case, my first major was psych. And then halfway through it, I was about to finish way too early. So I added on poli-sci as a major with a pre-law emphasis. And it was kind of just set in stone for me at that point. Yeah.
That's awesome. And by the way, being Madonna, wouldn't be a bad thing. I know.
No. Turns out the job was taken. Still taken.
Yeah. Have you ever seen her perform?
I just saw her perform,
How was
actually.
it?
It was amazing. It was
Really? Like recently? Like just
yes, like 3 weeks ago or whenever she was in LA, just
nice.
yeah, less than a month ago. She's amazing. I'd
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
be Madonna any day, sure.
She's an icon.
For sure.
So lawyers are born and not made. Love that.
Yeah,
I think that there's some truth to that actually. So you have a lot of experience based on your LinkedIn. Like, of course, I went there and checked it out a little bit today.
sure.
Um,
Yeah.
what advice can you give a law student out there to assist them in succeeding as a lawyer?
Don't listen, and this goes actually to your college years when you're applying to law school. Don't listen to all of these things people say about the highest ranking law school. And I say this as someone who went to a top 20 law school, so it's not like I'm poo-pooing, but don't listen to any of this advice. Go to a law school where they pay your loans, or they give you a
Yeah.
scholarship so you don't have to take loans and are able to support your career. Once you're in law school, don't fall into this. And if you ever check out my TikTok, I have some videos on this, but don't fall into this trap about like big law that's pushed by the law
Yeah,
school.
yeah,
Because none of us grew up wanting to, be a partner at XYZ law firm that we've never ever heard of, right? Until we went to
right.
law school. And that may not be the dream. And you get caught up in this wave of like, oh, you got to do the on campus interviews and you got to go to such and such and you're going to become partner in 7 years. And, those of us who are in the profession know that most people who go into big law don't stick around to get to that partnership time. They burn out, right? I could probably count just only on my two hands the number of people from my graduating law school that I know are still in law. People
Really? Wow. Still in law, not at big law, but just in law in general. That's
still in law. Don't take yourself too seriously. Law schools don't like to hype up the personal injury route. That's considered a no-no when you're at a higher ranked law school. But the personal injury lawyers are the ones who are simultaneously helping people, like we all supposedly went to law school to do, and also making good money, especially in California.
right.
But if you follow the traditional law school path, they're going to make you write for the journal and go into big law, and all of those things are great if you want that, right? I'm not saying that's a bad path, but it's not usually the path people go into law school wanting, and now they're on a road that wasn't part of their purpose, wasn't part of their mission, right? And now they're just kind of stuck in this, lifestyle that is impossible to sustain for a purpose that isn't there for them.
Golnoush, do you think that that's changed like over the past like 5 to 10 years? Like people used to want that big law lifestyle more, and now they're sort of like you said, you have there's like 3 of your classmates that are left practicing law. I bet a lot of them are doing startups, maybe like that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think that's changed over the past few years?
I don't think it changes for people until they've been out of law school long enough to realize they kind of got duped.
Wow.
I still, being kind of trying to launch my TikTok and stuff, I'm following all these law students, and
I gotta find you on there, by the way. Find me,
sure.
and I want to follow you back.
Sure, it's G_legal, so G
Okay.
legal, yeah. And I still see all of these law students kind of talking about big law as this like goal, and then you see other attorneys who are in big law showing like day in the life of, and by the time it's edited and manufactured for TikTok, it looks so fancy.
Day in the life of, and they getting coffee 3 times a day, like they having a massage.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's not a realistic view. So I think that people are still falling into that. And again, I do not mean this to poo-poo big law at all. Like, and I keep saying that, and people are like, why do you hate on big law? I'm not. I just don't think it's necessarily the dream of as many people as find themselves on that path suddenly, and they're not sure why. Right? Like that wasn't even the kind of law they want to practice. They've never even heard of this firm prior to first year of law school. So I think I think big law is great for a lot of people. It certainly is good income. It helps you pay off your loans faster. I just think align your career goals with your purpose,
Sure.
rather than hoping that you will fall into your purpose later somehow through your career. That's not how this goes at all.
Yeah. And I think that's great. I mean, I just think sometimes it's people don't know it that early on when they go to law school. Like, I think you say the right things, like go where you're not going to spend the most money, like where you get the loans, I mean, hindsight for me is 2020. I don't know about a lot of the kids who were younger going to law school, but sometimes, you see those shiny old brochures and you're like, hey, I'm going out there to, California. Like, this place looks amazing.
Sure.
Spending like 50 grand a year. And they're just like, what does that even mean? They don't know until they get slapped in the face with it, when they graduate. But anyway, I digress. So
no, it's completely true. And it's just like it's kind of the advice of your peers and your career counselors and stuff. And it's, when I was going to law school and my dad was like, go to the school that's giving you the best scholarships. And I was like, no, I mean, if I don't go to a top 20 law school, I'm going to fall off a bridge and never make money,
right.
And you end up similarly situated in all sorts of firms with people from very diverse backgrounds and law school. And then you realize, like, I could have done this, from anywhere. And after, 3 to 5 years, nobody even cares where you went to law school.
That's true. Yeah.
No one's ever asked me, like, I've been out for over 15 years. I don't think anyone's asked me for the last 10 years, at least.
That's why you wear the sweatshirt around that says where you went. I mean, it's top 20. You got to slap that.
I mean, I went to USC, so I wear the sweatshirt for a lot of reasons, because it's a fan favorite school. So go Trojans.
That's very good. I mean, hey, look, I only live like an hour from Harvard. I mean, that puts me
See, there you go.
like wear a Harvard shirt.
Yeah.
So, sort of a random question. Like, did you have any mentors, and what is your whole view on mentors?
I have had mentors. I had an excellent mentor when I was on the defense side. He's since retired. It's amazing, since switching back to the plaintiff's firm, I kind of am looking for not necessarily a set mentor, but what's been amazing has been that everyone on the plaintiff side, I don't want to say small lawyers versus big, but everyone is so helpful, and everyone is so quick to be like, what do you need? Do you have any questions? Let's go to lunch. Let's discuss your career plans. Do you have, questions about your office? Whatever it is.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I think there's several different types of mentors that you need. Now, looking back at it, you need career mentors, right, who have done the law part of it, right, who can tell you how to actually practice, which is its own skill. But I think you also need mentors, and maybe the second part doesn't have to be a lawyer, but it's helpful, who guide you in the survival of the practice of law.
Sure.
It is very different than the actual practice of law itself. This career is designed, and this is a whole other soapbox for me, but is designed to kind of haze you, right? And I think that having a mentor who has lived the work-life balance that you are seeking is the way to go. If you have a mentor who's like, when I used to work, 65 hours in a 24-hour day and never saw my family and never saw my friends and then that's who you're going to become. Right.
Yeah.
So you want to choose a mentor who's living the life that you aspire to live.
Oh, and so smart. I think that's great advice. I really do. Not just somebody, who could give you like a tidbit of advice here and there, but somebody you want to like shadow and sort of be like, I guess, a little bit. Like you see their lifestyle, you're like, hey, that's pretty cool. I think that's really good and helpful advice. So tell us a little bit about doing defense work at first. We know you're PI in employment now, but tell us about doing defense work.
So I actually started my career in plaintiff's work, switched to defense work, and then found myself way back to plaintiff's work, kind of coming full circle. I know you talk about this. I think you had an Insta story today about the full circle story of attorneys. Defense work.
I made that up myself too. Like I was at my alma mater and I did a little video in my hotel room. Sometimes I do it. Put myself out there a little bit more. All right, go ahead.
There you go. Defense work is very good training. on the plaintiff side, you hear a lot of conversations about attorneys who litigate versus attorneys who don't litigate. On the defense side, you have to litigate, right? You don't see a file pre-lit when it comes to insurance defense or personal injury defense. Like the pre-lit portion is done by the insurance adjusters or your clients or whatever. So you are litigating from the second file has hit your desk.
So they're like, hey, we've gone as far as we can with this. You got to take this on to court or whatever. And then
complaints been
come up with. And wait, is this? And excuse me if I have this back in my head, but I ask these questions. So is this insurance defense work basically? Like, is it okay? So this is like, let me tell you why this person's life wasn't valuable type of thing, like, or not, maybe not as like, drastic as that, but it's sort of minimizing, what happened a little bit, right?
My plaintiff's attorney friends will nod and say, yes, you got it exactly it. And I think we use the term insurance defense, but like, for example, my clients were all kind of self-insured companies. And so it wasn't really insurance companies, so to speak. Okay. There were cases of that as well. Obviously, it depends on if it's auto, if it's not auto. It's not about saying that this person's life wasn't ruined in any sort of way. At least that's not how I practiced it. And part of how I always practiced defense work was I kind of have always been plaintiff oriented at heart. And that doesn't mean that I didn't give amazing representation to my defense clients. It just always meant that I kept the human side of it always within sight, right? And I think that actually buys a lot of credibility with your own clients, even on the defense side, is that I know a lot of defense attorneys who just go to their clients and say, this person's a liar and let's not give them any money. And 6 months later, when you're asking your clients for $1 million, your credibility's shot. So part of being able to keep that humanistic side is being able to say to your clients on the defense side, listen, this person's really injured. They're very credible. They came across well at their deposition. A jury's going to like them because I liked them, right? And it's okay to say that. You have to have the confidence to be able to say that. So part of defense work is not just beating your chest, right, with the defense kind of mantras, but really looking at a case and seeing its value, seeing how it's going to probably play out in front of a jury, being able to be not a perfect predictor, but a, most of the time spot on predictor of what the case is going to ultimately go for.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that sounds about right. And do you ever, now on the PI side, do you ever run into people that you've worked when you were opposite side, or no? It's like California's so big you don't see that. And then you're talking about credibility, so you actually build your credibility a little bit as the defense doing defense work, because they see how you view the cases and how you've sort of looked at these people as a person and not just like a number sort of thing.
Completely. I think part of why I've found such a welcoming atmosphere amongst the plaintiffs' attorneys when I switched back and opened my own firm was because I tried to, at least for the most part, be kind when I was a defense attorney, not treat anyone's client like, that their lives didn't matter or that their stories didn't matter. I've always, tried to litigate fairly, not be petty, and not get into silly litigation fights and motion play and sanctions and all of this stuff. And so as a result, I've had a lot of plaintiffs' attorneys who are like, oh, you were so, great on this. And I remember you from such and such case. And awesome. I actually almost a good majority of my cases actually come from referrals from other plaintiffs' attorneys who saw me litigate on the defense side in maybe like a similar case or, some sort of case that they think aligns well with me. And they'll either ask me to associate on, or they'll, just refer me the case outright. So that's been really rewarding. That's such a great compliment.
Yeah, for sure. Referrals are an amazing compliment.
Sure.
So what made you make the switch again from defense to plaintiff's work?
So I think that's a two-part thing for me. One was why I made the switch back to plaintiff's work, but also why I opened up my own law firm. Because I could have just gone to another plaintiff's firm. There was a few opportunities at other firms for like a senior position or partnership position, which I decided to not take and go ahead and open my own law firm. The opening the law firm portion of it was because I was just in a bad environment in terms of my job, and I didn't think that it allowed me to provide the best representation for my clients that I could. And it was really affecting my own, kind of mental and physical health and, mismanagement and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to
That was actually like my follow-up, and you could probably put them together, which was like, how did you know you were ready to launch your own firm?
Yeah, I think that having seen enough of the bad and the good of managing a law firm, I felt that I could do it and be successful at it. And thankfully I have been. And you get to a point where I think I'm at a point where I couldn't work for someone else. I just couldn't. Yeah. I just couldn't do it anymore. I was really, it was just a bad situation.
Golnoush, you've already had a half an hour lunch. Get back in your office.
Right, exactly. I wish it was just that, right? So in terms of switching to the plaintiff side, like I said, I think I was always plaintiff oriented. My parents immigrated here from Iran in the middle of war and political struggle, right? And access to justice, concepts like access to justice and justice in itself were things that I had to face very young and understand very young. And everyone deserves access to justice, whether it's obviously in a criminal sense for sure, more than anything else, but the immigration, family law, but even in the civil context, even the corporations and even the insurance companies, right, deserve access to representation and justice. It's just harder for the common person, the little guy or woman or however way you want to label it. That person deserves even more robust representation because they are up against a well-oiled machine. And I'm not even saying anything negative about the insurance companies or the corporations. I actually, on the defense side, I didn't see all these evil things that plaintiffs' attorneys talk about, I didn't see it, but it is still much more powerful than the average person who's just been into an auto accident or has had a slip and fall or has had a coffee burn and their life is changed.
Right. Do you think there's a difference between the attorneys who are on the defense side and those who are the plaintiff's attorneys, like the qualities or characteristics of those attorneys? Like, do you think there's like a difference? Like, do you see yourself like having to use different sort of like qualities than maybe you did on the defense side, like maybe more aggressive or more like, looking for the issues or more compassion or what have you?
Sure. I want to say it's more important for defense attorneys to have compassion, whether they have it or not. I think they're the ones who really should always lead with compassion. Yep. But having said that, I think you'll find mixed characters on both sides. I really hate to stereotype either side. There's amazing people on the defense. There's amazing people on the plaintiff side. There are terrible lawyers on both sides. There are excellent lawyers on both sides. Yep. And I think the plaintiff's attorneys are more fun. That's for sure.
Yeah, they seem more fun, like on social media and stuff. I mean, and by the way, in like California, and I've connected with like a lot of like Southern California plaintiff attorneys, and it just feels like there's not even enough room on the 8-11 verdict sheet to write like how much of a recovery you guys get. It's like, what is this place? Of course it could be like amended or taken to the higher court or whatever, but it is crazy out there, right?
And we're not even the most plaintiff-oriented state. I had a conversation with an adjuster the other day for like an hour, because insurance adjusters, once they find out that you're former defense, will talk to you like forever.
Yeah.
They're not as all business as they usually can be. And he was saying, well, you got to go to Louisiana because the verdicts are triple, what you're getting in California. And I was like, okay, well, where do I take the Louisiana bar?
Right, I know. I got to get some clients and send them that way or something, right?
Yeah. So I would say the only thing I would say is very much the difference is the plaintiff's attorneys have the ability to be more creative than the defense side, because they answer mostly just to themselves. Like, obviously you have a client on the plaintiff side, but that client is a layperson, right? So you're not going to call them and say, well, what do you think the next strategy move should be, right? That's your job. And they're going to stay out of that. There's certain things, obviously, you have to run past them, but the day-to-day litigation strategy is yours. On the defense side, there's a lot more of, checking in with your client. And sometimes they want you to do things you don't agree with, or they don't agree to some gamble you want to make. And so I think as a result, I always say that, the worst thing attorneys do is, color by numbers. But I think you see a lot more color by numbers on the defense side.
Do you think, like, when an attorney gets a settlement, like a plaintiff's attorney gets a settlement, they're sort of like, oh, like, I hope that's good. Like, what if this other, like, law firm could have gotten, like, 3 times as much? Is there any, like, I don't know if that's imposter syndrome or, like, do they ever, like, do you think there's people out there who, like, second guess it? Because it's so competitive that, like, you get your client a decent settlement, like $1 million, say it's like $2 million, and, like, they could have gone to trial, or somebody else attorney, oh, I could have taken that to trial and gotten 10 million, something like that. Like, do you think that happens out there?
I think it happens a lot. When I was on the defense side, I'd have a lot of plaintiff attorney friends who are like, oh, so-and-so is killing it. They're getting $10 billion a day or whatever in these verdicts. But what most of these attorneys are not doing is posting their losses, And I would be like, okay, yeah, but I've seen them on the other side of cases with me, and, they've not been so aggressive as they keep saying they are. Or maybe they've left a lot of money on the table that they could have, right? So I think it's always good to keep that in mind, is that no one is advertising, oh, today I settled this for, $1,000. They're just not.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So tell us about your firm. Congrats on, launching and being a firm owner, being an entrepreneur. Tell us about Goharzad Law APC.
So like we said, personal injury and employment law. Those are the 2 areas that I specialize in. I also have, passion in. On the defense side, I did the personal injury mostly. We're a litigation firm because I am someone who's really just trained mostly my entire career in litigating. So chances are we try to settle things pre-lit when we can, but there's a good chance we're going to end up in court.
Right, for sure. So you're taking employment cases, plaintiffs, like what kind of employment cases are you taking on now?
So things except for workers' comp, though, if there's a hybrid issue, there's certainly attorneys that we work with that will take on the workers' comp portion of it if there's a hybrid case, which is rare. But things like wrongful termination, sexual harassment, racial discrimination, those kinds of things. A lot, severance package reviews is something that we do, because a lot of the times, severance packages aren't required by law, at least in California. And I don't know about you, but I haven't heard of a lot of companies just offering money when they get rid of someone out of the kindness of their hearts. And so when there's a severance package, there's always a fear by that employer that they might get sued for something. Now, it might be just their general standard, their general, CYA, right? But if it's just a couple people that they've gotten rid of and it's a severance agreement that follows it, there's usually some cause for concern. Really? And so when you have a severance package, you don't have to feel pressure to sign right then. Ask for some time. They have to give you a certain, they'll give you a certain time anyway, but call a lawyer, a lawyer severance package reviews, or who even does employment law. I'm sure that there's firms that do employment law. Call me, right?
Yeah.
And tell the story, because in telling the story, you might not know what is actionable, what is prohibited, but the lawyer will pick up on it. Half the time I'm hearing a story and I'm like, wait, what did you just say?
Yeah.
Right? It's something just kind of lost in the shuffle of this story, right? That's an actionable, employment law violation. And they're giving that severance agreement because in exchange for the money that you receive, you're waiving all of your rights to, file anything against these claims or to pursue these claims later. So my biggest piece of advice for anyone that is an employee is, if you get laid off or fired and you are offered a severance package, the first thing you do is give it to a lawyer. And you don't have to tell them you're giving it to a lawyer. You just say, thank you so much. I'm going to take some time to consider this. And you call a lawyer.
Yeah.
You call.
Interesting. Okay. Very good. So you post a lot about practice of law and law firm culture needing change. Like what in particular do you mean by that?
This is a soapbox that I've got on, and I think I'm going to stay on. And I hope to have the time to kind of really expand this into a thing. And we've touched upon it a little bit earlier.
Yep.
You graduate law school and you kind of have this expectation that you're going to be put through the ringer. And that's just kind of like a cycle of abuse that's handed down, right, from associate to partner to associate to partner, where you expect life to be very, very hard, and you expect to be yelled at, and you expect to, have to work really long hours for no reason. And we are seeing skyrocketing rates of lawyer suicide, depression, substance abuse, all of these things. And, every state has a state bar, right? And the state bar organization in California has devoted, a good amount of resources to substance abuse counseling, depression, et cetera, et cetera. But the practice has to change. Doing these things like counseling once someone's already developed an addiction, or MCLE required credits every 3 years on substance abuse or whatnot.
Yeah.
Too late. It's a Band-Aid on a bullet hole.
Right.
And, the state bar's job is to make sure that we don't disenfranchise clients, right? That we are not unethical in our practice of law. And if you ask the average attorney what that means, is they're going to say, well, the state bar, looks a lot at misappropriation of client trust account funds, right?
Wow.
And that's great. And that's a noble purpose. And that's important, right? But the practice of law in some firms and what we allow leads to disenfranchisement. For example, if I was in charge of the state bar, I would prohibit law firms from having a billable hour requirement for their associates. And I know, it's part of how they make their money. It's how they calculate being able to have an associate bill enough to pay their salary, and et cetera, et cetera. And I get that. But the ethical concerns, right, are if you have associates whose career depends on their bonus, or even without a bonus, just whether they're going to survive at a firm, depends on how many hours they're going to bill in a month. And then you've got a whole list of things that you have to do during the day that are not billable, right? So you're just going to eat those hours. Mm-hmm. How thorough of representation do you think that client is going to get? Like if an associate needs a few hours to ponder over a strategy and they can't bill for that, let's say, right? Or do legal research beyond the amount that's allowed to be billed, or whatever it is. The associate's not likely to do it, right? Because they have to survive, and they have to bill their hours. And that is disenfranchising the client. And I would argue in a worse way than misappropriating $1 or $2 from the trust account. Not that I'm saying that that's not important, but these are the ways in which law firm culture, right, the emphasis on the billable hour is destroying associates, right? Destroying lawyers, And at the same time, disenfranchising clients, it seems like this should be a no-brainer. Like, let's not allow this. The other thing is that, you can report to the state bar as a client if you've been disenfranchised by your lawyer, but there's something to be said about the state bar also looking into law firm turnovers, employment lawsuits against law firms. What is happening at these firms, right? Because if you have a law firm that's churning out associates and that letterhead is constantly changing, I won't go into names, but there is a law firm in California that there's a running joke that the letterhead changes every day because of the turnover in the associates.
Wow.
Disenfranchising the clients, right? Consistency is good for clients, whether on the plaintiff side or the defense side, family law, it doesn't matter, right? Having a certain, go-to lawyers on their files, right, is important. And having this like rotating clown car of associates handling their files disenfranchises the client. Sure. And so I think whatever way they have to do it, and State Bar of California, if you're listening, I'm happy to volunteer however way I can. But however way they want to do it, and I know the rest of my colleagues will be like, stop inviting the State Bar to give more oversight. But I think having to have firms report this kind of information at the end of the year is important. Allowing safe places for associates to report, law firms that are mistreating them in a real way, and not like, oh, the partner, was grumpy with me today, but like, real cycles of abuse that happen at law firms that distort and disenfranchise clients.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. You're very passionate about that.
Yeah. This is my soapbox. It's getting a taller soapbox every day. I just keep going up on it.
That's awesome. No, it's good to like take notice and like care that way about other, younger lawyers who are going through the mill and trying to, think of new ways to do it, to do things.
Well, what's happening is that I'm sorry to interrupt. What's happening is we're losing good lawyers.
Yeah.
We're losing good legal minds who are being sacrificed to the practice.
So it sounds like you actually, you told us that you have three classmates that are still in the practice of law. It sounds like this has happened to a lot of your classmates, maybe. Or some.
I don't know. I could count on, like I said, my two hands, the number of lawyers that I know that came from my graduating class. I don't know what anyone else is doing. Like over and over again, I'll see lawyers who have switched careers, which is great. It's wonderful. But I wonder often if they would have still made that decision to switch careers if the practice of law wasn't so unwelcoming and unsustainable. Before I opened up my own practice, I almost quit law. I was in a state where I'd see all these like law, like lawyer lifestyle memes, and like there's like, oh, you're on hell on earth and blah, blah, blah. And I'd always laugh and always repost them. And it's like, ha, 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 ha. But I identified with them, right, every day. And I opened up my own law firm. And guess what happened the next day? I didn't hate the practice of law. So had that not happened for me, right, I would have also been one of those numbers where I don't know what I would have done, but let's say whatever. I went into whatever field that I went into, became Madonna or whatnot. But
how long have you been on your own firm?
It has been a year now.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just hate to see good legal minds get sacrificed to the practice.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know how people, as like a more simple matter, I don't know how people sit there and work 17 hours a day. I mean, that's crazy. Like, how do you go, like, think for that long? You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy to me.
No, but that's a really good point, actually, is that, you should never be working 17 hours a day. But towards the end of that really grueling amount of hours, right, are you giving that client the best representation you can give them? Is that not our job? Are we not supposed to be the best advocates? Is that not our ethical duty? Right? And if the practice of law is being run in such a way that prevents us from doing that, then that's where we need to look at, right? Not just for the think of the lawyers, because nobody seems to care about the lawyers, right? Like the story of lawyer suicides and depression and stuff's it's been around forever. And everyone, every time you hear a very sad story of a lawyer suicide, you say, oh, this is terrible. And then you move on about your day, right? And it's bad for the clients. So if we're really going to not care about the lawyers, but we're going to put the clients first, which is fine, it's also bad for them. It's really bad for them.
Right. Golnoush, so question. I'm going to just ask you, unless you want to, you could keep talking. Okay. So, how do you get most of your clients?
Oh, I was saying that earlier. I get them mostly through referrals. I mean, advertise, obviously there's a certain amount of organic clients that call the office because they've, seen an ad or whatnot, but it's either referrals through someone who's a non-attorney,
right,
or a referral from an attorney, and a surprisingly good amount of referrals from other plaintiffs' personal injury attorneys.
So do you believe in like lawyer to lawyer networking? Is that a
sure?
Okay.
Yeah,
lawyer stories. All right.
No, what's funny is that as many plaintiffs' attorneys as there are in California, especially in Southern California, like I practice through the whole state, Northern and Southern, obviously, but Southern California is very plaintiff attorney dense, and there may be competition kind of theoretically, but not practically. Everyone, is willing to help each other out. There's, enough accidents and incidents for everybody, really.
Wow.
And there's really a surprising spirit of camaraderie on this side. There really is.
That's amazing to hear, though. That's great. It's an abundant field almost. I mean, unfortunately, with the accidents and stuff that go on. I mean, it's so how would you say your defense experience differentiates you then, like with all of the PI lawyers in Southern California, Northern California? Like, how does all your experience give you at your firm an upper hand for your clients?
Sure. When people ask me for a referral for like an immigration attorney, I always tell them to, when they're calling around, ask if that person's ever worked for, Homeland Security or ICE, as we used to call it, or USCIS now. I think having been on both sides gives you an unparalleled experience. I speak that language, right?
Sure.
As part of something that I offer for other lawyers is, lawyers will come and hire me to, review their files, right, from a defense eye, or depose their client as a practice deposition from a defense perspective. Okay. It's because I can see the things that are going to trigger the red flags, and I can see the things that are missing that would trigger the green flags on the other side. And being able to provide that viewpoint for my own clients allows their cases to go through smoother, for them to maximize the offers that are given to them, because I know what the traps are, right? And besides the traps, I think it buys you credibility with the defense attorneys and the adjusters, right? When they speak to you, because you understand what the things that are going through their mind, and you can kind of get ahead of it.
Yeah.
I review demand letters for other attorneys all the time, and I'm always like, well, why are you doing all this? Like, this is never even going to see the light of day by the time the defense attorneys, reported it to the adjuster, who's reported it to the client. Like, all of this is going to go down to this, this thing. Or vice versa. Like there's things, fundamental things that are missing. Like, why aren't you telling your client's story, right? The other person, if it's pre-lit, it's just an adjuster, wants to know their story. And having seen what things literally look like on the other side, even from a micro lens of how reports look, right? What information is ultimately used to create settlement authority. And that's not about using former clients' information. Obviously, I can't do that, but just the general idea of how claims get evaluated, right? the things that aren't important, the things that need to be explained. For example, something that's really important is the defense already knows what you're trying to hide. They know, right? So trying to not include that in your demand letter just doesn't do anything. Explain it up front, right? If there's a gap in your client's treatment, for example, explain why. If you had to send them to a lien provider because their own doctor was, a Medi-Cal doctor who refused to see them for the accident, say that. Yeah. Rather than the defense assuming that you sent them to a lien provider just to, rack up bills, right? Explain these things. Give your clients the best opportunity to maximize their coverage, their offers. And because I have that experience, I'm able to do that upfront from my clients. I'm able to, package their case, for lack of a better word, in the best bow, right? In the most
beneficial,
bow, right?
Yeah, no, that's super beneficial to any client to see it from both sides. It's almost, it's, so what's like a common mistake? I know you just kind of mentioned some of them, but like a common mistake maybe some lawyers make?
I guess I would say that the coloring by numbers, I call it litigation by numbers, but you remember like those old coloring books they give you when you're a kid and you have to color certain numbers and then you get the picture. And I think lawyers do this on both sides, especially in the personal injury world. The plaintiff's attorneys, they get a case, it goes to the case manager who sends the client to chiro or physical therapy. And then 6 months in, if they have pain, it goes to the ortho and the ortho recommends an MRI. And then the MRI goes to the pain management who gives them an injection and that doesn't work. And then you go to the surgeon and get a surgical recommendation. They either choose to have surgery or not. They stop treating, you send the demand letter, right? And now you've gone a year and a half, right? And on the defense side, kind of same thing. You get the file, you answer the complaint, you send some discovery out, you get their medical providers, you send subpoenas for their records, you depose the client, you depose the plaintiff, you do a defense medical, you request settlement authority, you go to mediation, case settles, right? Not every case needs to go through all of that. When I say lawyers are born, they're not made, right? The lawyer is part of having the creativity and the curiosity to create solutions for your clients that make this case easier or faster or bigger, whatever the intent, the intention of the case is, right? If you color by numbers, will you fail? Probably not, right? You're going to get a pretty picture at the end, but is it going to be Van Gogh? No, it's a coloring book, colored by the numbers. So I think a mistake that attorneys make is they fall into a routine because it's easier, right? And they just do, or they're overwhelmed by files. And sometimes, on the defense side, hey, like you don't have to necessarily depose the plaintiff. If liability is adverse to your client and the injury is objective, call your client and say, let's make an offer for X amount. Why are you doing all this? Right? Yeah. We're just leaving the courts at that point. And we're creating, busy work for ourselves, really.
Right.
On the plaintiff side, same thing. If you know from the jump, your client probably has a torn meniscus, do that first. MRI right off the gate, whatever it is. Right. But be creative in how you litigate, be creative in how you speak to opposing counsel, sit down with opposing counsel and be like, this is where I'm at, this is where my client's at, where are you at? How can we figure this out? How can we streamline this process? Especially now, the court systems are giving trial dates years out, right? So, you're going to let the case go stale. Be creative in your approach to files. Really think about them. And this goes back to my original point about billable hours, right? Creativity is not a billable task.
Right. So like on the defense, those associates going to want to be doing those depositions, you know what I mean?
Right. The associates are going to want to do those depositions because they get to bill for them and it's easy billing, but that's not the best thing for the client. Sure. It's just not. Yeah.
Sure. So give us some advice for someone who wants to make the switch from the defense side to being a PI attorney, plaintiff.
The best option would be talk to someone who's done that, right? Call me. I'm always happy to meet with people, get on a phone,
Awesome.
and give advice. But, find out what it is that drives you. Because if you are unhappy on the defense side, let's say because you don't like litigating, and you won't be happy litigating on plaintiff or defense, then switching to the plaintiff side is not going to do you any good, because the big numbers are if you are ready and prepared to litigate your files, right? You got to figure out what's your purpose in being a lawyer. And also, what are the things about the practice while you're on the defense side that's making you miserable? Is it the money? Because you might not make the money, right, if you switch. Is it you just don't like the billable hour and you could live without a billable hour? Then sure, absolutely switch tomorrow to any other practice of law, right? So I would say, if you can't, just generally switching from anything, if you cannot, through the course of your career in law, figure out your purpose, you will be doomed. You'll be doomed. I don't care what side you're on. I don't care how many years you've been practicing. And I know that the first few years, you're just getting your footing. And if you don't have your purpose, that's perfectly fine. But at some point, your footing is there. And you need to be in a place where you enjoy being a lawyer, right? I see lawyers all the time. You're talking about they're laughing and joking on social media. Those lawyers are like that in real life, right? Like you go to their office, they're laughing and joking. If you see them out with their family somewhere, they're laughing and joking. They have figured out a way to align their purpose with their practice and also make money doing it, and be able to balance that with their lifestyle that they want. And it doesn't look the same for every person. It's going to look differently, but I don't think attorneys spend enough time thinking about purpose.
Wow. Golnoush, you have so much good advice to share.
Thank you.
Just do an advice column. People need to
just put up a booth. I've been saying that, but people, people don't like my unsolicited
you're like a guru. It's like the lawyer, unbelievable. And I do actually am asked another question for advice.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone like a lawyer? What advice would you give a lawyer who wants to launch their own firm?
If it's plaintiff's work, then you have to remember that you're not going to get paid until a case settles.
Right.
So figure out, you don't have to have savings or anything.
Do some DUIs in there or something?
No, well, you know what? Maybe, right? So find your secondary source of income. And so for me, a part of my secondary source of income was, calling other plaintiffs' attorneys saying who knew me, right?
Yeah.
Who I didn't have to submit a resume to. They had seen me litigate. They knew my work was good. And I was like, hey, I'm about to do this. If I do this, do you have contract work that I can do for you? Can I make appearances for you? And can I, do depositions or do motions, whatever it is, right? And it was resounding yeses, because it's, a lot of law firms have a lot of associates. They don't necessarily have people who litigate. So for me, that was kind of my edge. But for example, you said the DUI thing, if there's a secondary type of law that's not contingency that you know how to do that. Line that up, start advertising. If it's immigration, anything flat fee. If you could take a course that teaches you how to do, I don't know, DUIs, let's just go with that teaches you how to do quick, simple traffic tickets. Let's just take something that's less serious, right?
Squatters or something,
Yeah, if you can take a course that teaches you how to do traffic tickets and you're okay with doing that while you're, building your firm, then do that. You don't have to wait until you've got, a ton of savings. I didn't.
Yeah, that's good advice. So I noticed on your LinkedIn that you've been on a board. You're a board member on Child International for almost 5 years. And I am. I thought that sounded cool. I don't really know what it is, but I'd love for you to share about it.
Sure. Child International is a charity that is aimed at mostly refugee children and families, both here locally in the States, in California, in Southern California, and also abroad. The idea and the mission behind Child International is that by providing resources, particularly focused on education, right, we can give these children a chance. Every child deserves a chance.
Sure.
And if you start from the bottom meaning youth, right, that's the most effective way to create change, right, is starting from a child's level, starting from the education level. And we do things anywhere from funding college, funding school supplies, funding, we do like a back to school drive with school supplies, backpacks, gift cards. We do like a Christmas drive.
Nice.
Yeah, we have an adopt a family program that's amazing, which essentially you're pledging a certain amount to be able to, cover the resources of an entire family who may have come here as immigrants and fallen on hard times, or from refugees. And they don't have to be immigrants or refugees. They can just actually be just any family really who applies through the system and gets approved. But the idea is, children first, family first. If you can provide the very minimal resources even that sometimes a family needs, even just for a few months, right, that can prevent a landslide of terrible things from happening, right? Once someone loses a job and then they lose their home and then they lose the car that they're sleeping in, and so forth and so on, you've created an avalanche now. And it was really important to me to be part of something that makes a difference beyond just who I am as an attorney. I could do pro bono work, which is, something I also do from here and there. But to me, it's not enough to just donate money. If you believe that we are in a world where we all belong to each other and we all have a responsibility for community, we have a responsibility in a real way to take care of our neighbors, then there is always something to do and there is always somewhere to help. And if anyone needs any more information, I know there's many, many organizations by similar names than Child International. And so if anybody has questions or wants to make a donation, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll provide any sort of donation links, or I'll send you the page to our charity. And I appreciate you bringing that up, actually.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's really cool. That's great work. And, you gave us so much content and advice, and you're like a wizard or something with this stuff. So I don't know if there's like a name for.
I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn now.
You should.
Wizard Guru.
There you, Wizard Guru.
Wizard Guru.
Thank you so much. Is there anything we left out that you want to touch on? Any other advice that you'd like to share before we sign?
Let me think. No, I think we covered it all. I could talk forever, as everyone in my life will attest to and agree that I probably can't stop speaking. So I could go on forever, but I think you've covered it, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, you did. This was great. Thank you for coming on. I'm glad to be connected with you, and we're definitely going to stay in touch and whatever. So everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.